Good morning and thank you very much for that introduction. Very privileged to be here at the St. Joseph's College, a very prestigious institution, I must say. And I have been working in the field of international education at schools. I represent the Legacy School at Bangalore, a very progressive international school offering the Cambridge Pathways curriculum, K to 12, and also the International Baccalaureate Diploma program. I have been associated with higher education at Christ University, and I set up the Indus Training and Research Institute. And while we were doing all this, I thought it is important to create more meaning than just going for regular jobs. So what do we do that makes our lives a little more meaningful than regular jobs? I chose to work with a Swiss NGO voluntarily to be an advocate for the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I'm going to explain to you these goals, why they're so important, what is SDG for, how it's aligning with the NEP, and how further learning is going to happen with regards to flexible learning. So, let me take you through a few slides. We will have a question and answer session thereafter. There's a video also that I'll showcase. What is the United Nations? First of all, you need to understand what the United Nations really is. It is basically an NGO, really. Yes, it's a not-for-profit foundation, but it was referred as the UN because they needed unity after the Second World War. So the United Nations was set up after the Second World War to promote peace and intercultural understanding and respect. So the UN has several member states. These are countries that participate to provide donations. And the UN has several bodies like the WHO, the World Health Organization, which at the moment is monitoring the global pandemic. You have the UNICEF, which is the fund movement for children, underprivileged children in different parts of the world. And of course the UNESCO that you have heard of, and I'm sure all of you must have heard of the different umbrella branches and wings of the United Nations. The basic role of the United Nations is to increase political dialogue and economic cooperation between different countries of the world. The UN system is a very complex, dynamic, vibrant system with different offices in different parts of the world, and they have a General Assembly, a Security Council, Economic and Social Council, Secretariat, a Court of Justice as well, and it looks into various arms of international governance. Of course, in recent days, the UN has been struggling with regards to so many developments in the international scenario, and you know what is going on today. So quite tragic, but hopefully the situation will improve. These are the very many distinguished Secretary Generals of the United Nations. Some of them you may know. Anybody? You recognize a familiar face? You're all postgraduate students. Yes, please? Kofi Annan. Yes, absolutely. Where is he? He's right here. Yes, he was, yes? Ban Ki-moon, very good. Yes. Anybody else? Very good. We've got two Secretary Generals. Do you know who this is? Antonio Guterres, correct. So we have all of these very distinguished, eminent members of the UN Secretary General elected from different countries, and this is what the entire assembly looks like when they are in full session in New York. This is how the sessions look, and they have political dialogue, voting, lobbying. It's very interesting, and some of the baccalaureate students have the Model United Nations taught in the school so that they understand if they want to take up international relations as a career, then they have a meaningful chance to learning what is really going on in the UN. So when you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, what are these Sustainable Development Goals? You need to understand what these goals are. How do we relate to them? Is it really important to participate in advocacy for these goals? And how do we promote active participation with on-ground projects? So there are 17 Sustainable Developmental Goals. As a result of the Millennial Developmental Goals, this was the outcome. They were adopted by the 194 UN members at that point in time who wanted to make sure they have preservation, conservation, and peace, prosperity, and partnerships as the mainstay by 2030. Focus is economic, social, and environmental projects. These are the 17 goals. I'm sure you all know these goals. And you may not know what is goal 1, but let me tell you, no poverty. Poverty alleviation is goal 1. This has to be at the back of your mind if you want to be a global citizen. If you want to be a global citizen who wants to make a change in the world, you need to know the UN Sustainable Development Goal. Number 1. That's the first criteria for a global citizen. You should also be accepting of people with different cultural differences. You should have an attitude of acceptance. You should also have the ability to communicate in a language that is understood by many others beyond your own community. And it is also important to do something for the betterment of others in any one area of the very many goals. I must mention all goals. The second goal, no hunger. So many people go hungry, and we have to take interest in trying to alleviate hunger. Good health and well-being, we must, medical fraternity. Today, the world is languishing because of the pandemic. Such disastrous consequences, so we have to look at how we can improve public health. Quality education. India is at a 75% rate today, literacy rate. But if you look at the global literacy rate, it's much higher. It reached 90% long ago. So we are still at 75% and we are not at world average. But the good news is that when we achieved independence, our literacy rate was abysmal. It was dismal. Fortunately, now our literacy rate is almost 75%. Gender equality, this is something that is a real challenge even in this country. How do we empower women, independence of women, women in leadership? And it's not just jobs and positions. It is about really accepting and appreciating genders, how we can complement each other and working hand in hand to achieve a better equitable society. Clean water and sanitization, big challenge even today, isn't it? Affordable and clean energy, renewable sources of energy, how long can we depend on what's there? Decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, very important. Reduced inequalities, there are still so many inequalities that are there in the society and we need to reduce these. Sustainable cities, responsible consumption, there are some countries consuming more than the others and then they monopolize the whole thing. How long? It won't work too long. There has to be enough sharing of resources because monopoly never works. And the good old statement, divide and rule, never works. It's a flop policy. We have to share and share alike, as hard as it is to digest. That's the way forward. Of course, climate change, not many people are talking about it, but definitely the climate is going to give up on us. What is happening today? We have viruses and bugs coming out of fish, popping out of fish, and these viruses were mutated even further in the air when they come in contact with humans. Something else is happening. So we are getting mutated bacteria and microscopic pathogens in our bodies which are mutating because we are cutting down the trees to put up concrete jungles. We are using trees, cutting them to make currency, which is paper. Now it's Bitcoin currency. Something else is happening. So we are buying and selling people in an attempt to stay on top. Controversial, isn't it? Why? Our focus is not on the climate. Our focus is not on people. It is on economic gain. Sad. Think deeply. Think deeper. We have to preserve our climate, keep the air clean, smoking, and all this in public places not required. Life below water. Are we sustaining life below water? Do we respect life below water? Life on land. Peace, justice, and strong institutions. This is something very important as well. Partnerships for the goal. We need to work together for partnerships for the goals. And of course, the main focal area is SDG 4. Now, SDG 4 speaks about quality education. It speaks about various subfacets, 4.1, 2, 3, 4. So you see, complete free and primary healthcare and secondary schooling, complete free primary and secondary schooling for all. Access to early childhood education and care is 4.2. 4.3 is affordable, quality, technical, vocational, tertiary and university level education. How much of it is really happening in India is a challenge. 4.4, skills for employment and entrepreneurship. 4.5, eliminate gender disparities to have equal access. 4.6, ensure all youth and most adults have numeracy and literacy. 4.7, knowledge and skills for sustainable development, plus equity, scholarships, increased quality teachers, etc. I was very happy to see Dr. Kasturi Rangan today. Padma Vibhushan, who is one of the key members in drafting the National Education Policy. All the words of the National Education Policy are overlapping with SDG 4. So they used SDG 4 as a reference point in order to frame the NEP, which is fantastic. And they did it on their own. They did not have any affiliation with any political party, or it was a complete educational reform movement launched by educators and intellectuals and intelligentsia of our country, which is very good. So I'm very happy that St. Joseph's College is looking at how SDG 4 is aligning with the NEP and how flexible learning pathways are going to augur well for learning for different age groups, whether in schools or colleges and universities. So we need to see how this is all aligned. We need to see the alignment of sorts. We need to see the umbrella picture, the big picture. So it's very good that the NEP, the National Education Policy discussion that we are having today, is clearly showing the articulation of certain points and concepts on the macro level that the world is facing, as well as the government reforms that we are instituting in our country. So the institutionalization of the goals is definitely one of the main reasons because as to why we are going to make good progress with the NEP. The language is almost the same. Skill sets, vocational training, higher education for all, reforming the primary school sector, scholarships, increased quality of teachers, improving the ratio of student teachers in the schools and colleges. I had the privilege of being at the UN in Geneva. They have a training and research institute, and if you do not know, one of our most senior diplomats today is Mr. Nikhil Seth. He's the UN Assistant Secretary General, and he's also the Executive Director of the United Nations Institute of Training and Research, based in Geneva, and these folks work very hard along with their teams and 5 departments at UNITA to promote equality, justice, peace, and training for the goals, as well as projects. So I'd let you watch the video. When we first launched the Global Challenges Forum MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding with the UNITA, he did give a lecture and just sort of an exhortation. I'll let you listen to him.
Executive Director of the UN Institute for Training and Research in Geneva. It is my distinct pleasure to deliver these words of welcome to all of you on this special day, the formal launch of the 1M 2030 initiative, developed in partnership with the Global Challenges Forum and with several other stakeholders around the world that believe in the potential of youth. In 2015, the governments of this world adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the 70 Sustainable Development Goals. These goals lay out what must be in place if we are to achieve a better world for all by the year 2030. Today, there are 1.8 billion people between 15 and 24 years, and it is predicted that this number will grow significantly by 2030. Meanwhile, 1/3 of these young people are not in education, employment, or training. Indeed, youth are the most vulnerable groups and often are the first to be affected by crisis. As such, they deserve special attention, and several SDG targets directly reference young people. However, youth are far from being only passive beneficiaries of the 2030 Agenda. They are playing an active role in its implementation. Through education, technical training, entrepreneurship, and above all, innovative thinking, they are making this planet a better place. In this light, 1.8 billion young people present an immense opportunity for global change. We are all living in the information age, which has unfolded in a series of disruptions in every industry, in telecommunication, social media, automobile, and services. This time is testament to the fact that in any form of progress, youthful innovators are the first line of change. You may be aware that corporations such as Apple, Microsoft, Dell, Facebook, YouTube were all founded by young individuals in small garages or their dormitories. The youth are proven to be wired for risk-taking, novelty-seeking, and peer bonding. They have been at the forefront of these disruptions, propelling the world forward. Encouragement of youth leadership in socio-political spheres might have the same effect towards actualizing sustainability and international peace and security. The UN is uniquely placed to act as a source of protection and support for young people and a platform through which their needs can be addressed, their voices can be amplified, and their engagement can be advanced. Today, 90% of youth live in developing countries. It is there where youth leadership can have the most impact. Reaching communities that have traditionally been left behind is a challenge that must be overcome if we are to achieve the SDGs. Youth leaders can act as multipliers within their communities and transform them from the bottom up. In response, the 1M 2030 initiative aims to equip young leaders with the skills they need to implement successful social ventures to translate this opportunity into tangible progress towards sustainable development. In this light, my special welcome goes to a special group of youth entrepreneurs assembled here today. You have been selected to participate in the 1M 2030 Spotlight to present your local sustainable development projects because you are already impacting your communities in meaningful ways. We are here today to showcase your achievements, but most importantly, to learn from your ideas and courage, and to be inspired to be change makers ourselves. Lastly, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. I'm sure that the speeches, discussions, and presentations by young entrepreneurs will prove to be an enlightening experience. I wish you success in the deliberations ahead. Thank you.
So as you can see, very clearly, the UN Secretary General is advocating for youth to be a part of the Sustainable Development Challenge that we call it, because it's not really sustainable if people are not going to participate in the reforms and if they don't understand, then it doesn't make any sense. Alright, so what does the UN do? It creates various avenues and opportunities for people of all age groups to come, study, learn, and take up one of these goals as their career vocation, any one goal. They also look at international relations, they look at the UNDP, looks at the development program, infrastructure, they allocate funds and special projects can be taken up. People with the background of management and commerce are always welcomed into such projects. So we have to see the different opportunities school children also have to learn about the SDGs. And the NEP would not have been a successful reality unless there was an overarching framework for global economic sustainable development. The NEP was introduced keeping in light the UN goals, particularly the framework of the SDG 4 and the yardstick for measuring it and ensuring its completion by 2030. Fortunately, the NEP gives us enough time to 2040 to get a lot of things done. So it is a very good vertical alignment of sorts between what is happening in our country and what is happening in the international community. There are several avenues to enhance human capital by participating in all these different goals. Water conservation, forest preservation, tree plantation, and all this can be done through forums, blogs, advocacy, through student tours, study tours, excursions, and slowly as you build up on-ground projects, simple projects add up value. So they will add up value not only to you but also to the ecosystem. Of course, the CIFAL Center, I won't go there, but it's a training and research center for diplomatic policy and lobbying for different kinds of learning across the world. They have 20 centers. And where do I come in? Like where do I fit into the UN goals and the Swiss Foundation and the National Education Policy? We have a Swiss Foundation, which is a voluntary foundation. Members of the Secretariat are not paid. We do not get a salary. However, we are offered opportunities to travel, to learn, to network, to meet new people, conference across the world, whether it's in Switzerland or the United States. I've been to California, I've been to Switzerland and Dubai, and we are looking at opportunities in the future as and when the world scenario stabilizes to a certain extent to start offices in China and Africa also. And what we're looking at is advocacy for the goals, encouraging people, training them, especially the youth, and we are looking at how we can have a publication company, and also we are looking at a university that will be offering online courses. All this is done by a head office in Delhi. So we have advocacy for unique challenges, local challenges, those which are facing the immediate public that we serve, and we are looking at how we can overcome these challenges. All this is done beyond a steady job. We have to work and then we have to do social work. Do you understand the difference? People don't understand that social work has to be done beyond your immediate vocation. Do you understand? You have to have a job, that is your work, that's your profession. I'm an administrator in an international school, but I also do social work. Do you understand the difference? Always make sure you have something to do, and then you have something a little more meaningful for yourself that you can do. That gives you the opportunities to have a broader mindset. It'll give you a critical bent of mind, open-ended thinking, and you'll get to meet all kinds of people from different parts of the country, different parts of the world. You can do something meaningful. People may appreciate your efforts in that regard. So the founders work for the UN. My direct supervisor worked with the United Nations. He was a diplomat in Geneva. He worked for the White House. He worked for 3 US presidents. We do have different options in transformative education, integrated learning, energy conservation, cooperative dialogue. Largely think tanks, global think tanks, people who are evolved to think and speak about different pressing issues. So different projects are the 1 million youth leadership and UN SDGs, which we have partnered. We have an MOU with the United Nations Institute of Training and Research. And then other projects in the nascent stages are Global Resilience Consortium, the Publication House, the GKN, and the Resilience University is a completely online training platform. So this was the MOU with the UNITAR. This is Alex Meia. He is the Director for Division of People and Social Cooperation, Social Inclusion. Dr. Ken Nanakan, who was one of the advisory and co-founders, he's no more. Dr. Walter Chrisman, who is the founding chairman of the Global Challenges Forum, Dr. Kathleen Reed Martinez, and some of our friends from the US and who work with the UN. And so this is the kind of intergenerational dialogue that we are creating. People who speak, but speak with meaning. They are actually doing something. They don't come there just because they are selected. No, they are actually doing projects on the ground that are making lives better for others. It's a challenge to do that. And they're doing that on the free time, with the free time that they have, with the limited resources that they have. Some have set up their own companies, some have set up their own plantation programs, some are raising donations for feeding children, some are looking at donations for adult women who are bereft, who do not have a means of livelihood, who are handicapped, and all that. And some have their own high-tech companies. They've set up companies that make apps and all that. So it's very interesting. Some are looking at conservation projects. So we have an intergeneration gap, and 1M 2030 had 9 spotlight speakers. We selected them. Then we had 5 professionals, and we had Dr. Derek Pellon, my friend, who is in Geneva. He worked for the UN. Of course, Julia Gent also worked for the United Nations. And we have several people who are there now in Italy, in the US, who are there, who are still with them. Now she's with the World Economic Forum. So we have these networks formed, and with this interactive dialogue, intergenerational dialogue, we are hand-holding and nurturing a group of young people to take advocacy forward with regard to the goals. So these are some more pictures of how we were talking about Transformative Education Forum. We had a national UN SDG webinar also. Diaspora, members of the diaspora, my classmate did Sahil, he's in Australia. Vivek Mansukhani, who's a very famous theatre personality, he's in Delhi. He's the head of the Institute of International Education, of course, Dr. Walter. Shekhar Kalyanpur, who's a spiritual philosopher in Mumbai for Bollywood. And so we all meet, network, greet, and have exhortations, written materials, and also guidelines where we put people in touch with those funders, those who have the money, and we just network people and put them across so that the ideas are not lost out, that they get the resources and the means to do what they want to do. But it's a slow, arduous effort, and all this has to be done as social work. It is not a means for making money. This is pure charitable initiative for societal development. IM 2030, you can read up. There's a website on this. There's a GRC. This is coming up. It's in nascent stages. There's a Global Resilience University and Global Knowledge Networking, some of our projects. And then we are looking at now the focus of SDG 4 and how it's aligning with the National Education Policy. It's very important to understand really what Goal 4 is all about. It talks about inclusivity And equitable quality education. Right now there is no inclusivity in our education system. It is largely exclusive. If you have the money, you can afford quality education. Hello, am I telling the truth? It's like that. If you have the means and resources, then you can afford quality education. Otherwise, you can afford whatever is available. You have to compromise. So what is inclusive? What is equitable? What is the real meaning of quality education? That itself is a big question mark. Is quality education degrees and diplomas? Or it is more than that? What about lifelong learning? That doesn't happen. After a certain age, we stop studying, we go into our workplaces, and that's it, we start our families, and beyond that, lifelong learning is something we can't do. And some people think lifelong learning is just getting degrees and diplomas. So, about knowledge networking. What is knowledge networking? What does that do to you as a lifelong learner? It helps you become a progressive learner. Every day is a learning experience. I learned when I was in the inaugural ceremony today, and I could meet Dr. Kasturi Rangan, at least hear him speak. I couldn't meet him actually, but I could hear him speak, and hearing an elderly gentleman of that stature talking about how he managed to pull a reform system for the next 20 years for the government and for our educators is no small achievement. It's a Herculean task, and I must compliment the entire NEP committee for managing to do some of this. Some of the reforms postulated are very good, because if you look at the case study of India, 73% of adults are literate today, 73%. If you look at the world average, the global literacy rate is 91%. We have a long way to go, but when India achieved its freedom, of course, we were at a 17% or 18%. We have grown very rapidly over 50 to 60 years. We have grown quite rapidly to 73%, and I think by the time we reach 90%, maybe in another 20 years, by the time NEP is actualized on ground, hopefully we'll have touched the 90% mark if we really have to follow the NEP. The National Education Policy came as an outcome of the UN SDG 4 and the deliberations in the socio-economic and the diplomacy level as to how India, beleaguered as a third world country or a developing country, needs to understand where it needs to go, keeping in tandem with the economic development of the Western civilization. That being said, I'm only saying beleaguered because that is the way people brand countries for their own gain, isn't it? So I think we are a far more sophisticated society because we have far more numbers, and quality for us is subjective. So there you have maybe 300, 400 million people, and here we have 1.2 billion people, or 1.5. They say we are going to overtake China in the next 10 years in terms of population. So our population dynamics are quite challenging, our demographics are challenging, and I think we have the youngest population of youth or young people as compared to any other country in the world. That itself is showing the potential of our country. And the age group of these young people, hardly 25, 26. In fact, they're saying it's even 23. So you see, India has far more demographic advantages, and there's a lot more rotation happening with the world becoming a global village. Irrespective of the pandemic, people want to go study, they want to go work abroad, they want to come back to India. They're building all kinds of collaborations and bridges. That is going to make society more exciting and interesting and equitable. Sharing resources and ideas from both East and West. That's where the magic happens. So you see, the National Education Policy 2020 with the MHRD now looking at various reforms at school as well as college level. They're looking at a completely new Ministry of Education. So they changed the entire political dialogue that comes through for education. There's no MHRD, it's just Ministry of Education. The focus is education, which is excellent. Which is excellent. There are some key reforms suggested for schools and some key reforms suggested for colleges, for academic institutions, and I'll go into details in the slides ahead, but what this slide I want to show you, the Ministry of Education now. Of course, it was approved by the Cabinet in 2020, July 29. It's a comprehensive framework, and it attempts to transform India's ecosystem in the next 10 to 20 years. This is the key word. It is the first policy of the 21st century, and it is aligned to the 2030 United Nations Agenda for Sustainable Development. Did you see how well we have made sure that India is keeping on track with global development? So the NEP is aligned to the 2030 UN Agenda. Now there are very many policy reforms which are suggested at school level and very many suggested at university level. And I must mention that quite a few of these policies never existed. Some of these are quite mind-boggling, even when I thought about flexible learning pathways and I didn't have a clue about what it is. But when I did my research and I was trying to find out, when I was asked to present this information, I did my own homework and studies, and I realized that a lot of what I'm already advocating is what the NEP is talking about, and the flexible learning pathways is something that you can actually come up with. There's no preset flexible learning pathway. Flexible means you can customize, it's malleable, you can work with it, and you can work through whatever challenges you're facing with regard to a fixed, rigid education system with a lot of rules and regulations that are laid down by governments. NEP 2020, one-year report card. What has changed? Some of this has changed. There's going to be a single functional regulatory body. We don't have UGC, AICTE, or all these, the medical governance board. None of these will now count. It's going to be one single regulatory council for higher education. Everything factors under that. They make the rules. And we're going to have a lot more flexibility with colleges being granted more autonomy to function independently. Otherwise, it's like St. Joseph's College accredited to Bangalore University, and then someone in Bangalore University tells you what to do. It's not required anymore. You have your own autonomy and independence to award courses, degrees, and even PhDs in the future. Colleges will be able to award. So we can avoid the bureaucracy in educational systems and also keep the fees lower. They're looking at capping fees to just about a subsidized rate. So when you look at the national education policy and its major reforms for school, the main reforms for schooling is that no longer will we have 10 and 2, but we're going to have 5, 3, 3, 4. 5, 3, 3, 4. And I'm working at an international school, and I was thinking to myself, how do we make this happen? It's quite a challenge to have a new academic structure with checklists and entry points and checkpoints where we have examinations over here, 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 and here. The entire framing of curriculum is going to be a little different. The books, the resources, assessment, everything is going to change. The entire formatting of schools is going to change. Same thing in colleges. Plus, there's 6% of GDP now recommended by the NEP, which is fantastic because the developing countries are getting 16% or 18% of GDP, gross domestic product, allocated for their development. So I'm happy that at least 6%. Right now we were using only 3 or 4%, and we have such a massive population, we definitely need more money to be invested in our government and private, semi-private institutions. So if you look at the comprehensive changes in higher education, so many changes. The higher education institutions will be transformed into multidisciplinary colleges of offering courses that you've never heard of. You've not heard of these courses, like data science is just new. There'll be so many other, all kinds of new technology, skill sets, vocational training that you don't have today will come up in the next 5 years. And you'll be doing specialized and generalized courses in the same college. The same college can now open up more streams. It's not art, science and commerce. Gone are the days when you're talking about art, science and commerce. There's no differentiation now between art, science and commerce, and keeping them separate, and STEM is different and medicine is different. It's going to be integrated. You're going to choose electives, and some of your courses are going to be customized during the integrated programs. 4-year courses, 5-year courses. Do you understand what I'm saying? A lot of advantage, because then that creates the environment for interdisciplinary learning. Do you understand? So you learn more within a shorter period of time, rather than saying I'm only going to focus on the arts, I'm not going to study the commerces and the maths. I'm going to look at everything together, and we're going to do all this in electives, and we're going to shape and customize our own learning. That gives students the choice of personalizing their learning. You're going to have many more diplomas, like community colleges abroad. Bachelor's courses will be four years, like there's going to be a BSc B.Ed and a BCom B.Ed, so there's going to be a 4-year B.Ed, there's going to be a 5-year integrated master's course, there'll be multidisciplinary education, and the credit system will be established. Right now we don't have credit system, it'll be established. We are not going to keep art, sciences and commerce and humanities separate. We're going to have integrated exposure to these fields. Many advantages. Key proposals on school education. I will read this out because it is important. Which are the key proposals after studying the entire NEP? These are the 10 key points for schools. And then for universities, I studied the entire higher education reform, and these are the main 20 points. It took me a long time to get down to these 10 and 20 points, and it's easier to understand. Let me mention these 10. First point in school education is modification of academic structure. This proposal will introduce a 5-3-3-4-year structure program covering age groups 3 to 18 years. Second point, foundational literacy and numeracy. NEP 2020 proposes to achieve 100% foundational literacy and numeracy by 2025. Tall order, tall task. Possible though. Third point, teacher-student ratio, teacher-pupil ratio to be maintained under 1:30 in all schools, including government schools. Right now, there's one teacher and 60 students in the classroom. Teacher doesn't even know the names of the children. Not her fault or his fault. So you can't have 60 or 70 students in the classroom. It's 1:30. 30, max cap, 30. These are some of the good things that are happening in our country. We need to be proud of it. Curtailing dropout rates at university levels and to ensure universal access to higher education. Fifth point, open distance learning programs offered by NIOS will be expanded. NIOS, by the way, is it's a very interesting system where you can do homeschooling. So you can do home colleging also. I don't know if it's correct English, but I'm just saying, you can do homeschooling and then you can do home college or whatever it's called. I don't advocate it necessarily, but sometimes in mitigating circumstances, people are not able to go out, they're not able to study, they're not able to interact. In that kind of situation, they can do all this kind of creative work. Flexibility in course choices. Reduced curriculum content, very important. They're going to be shorter books, shorter lessons, shorter curriculum load in preparation for exams. So there is not going to be that enormous syllabus that you have to revise and mug. So the emphasis on rote memorization is going to reduce substantially. Less is more. Better to know things that are, in limited capacity than not know anything which is an expansive capacity. Isn't it? Holistic education and wide choice of subjects will be the new distinguishing feature of secondary school education. Right now in schools, children are burdened with bags and so much homework and all that. That's going to reduce now significantly. And they're also going to look at holistic development. That means art, sciences, the sports, music is going to be assessed at school level. Earlier we didn't have that. PT was playtime. We just went to play, came back, it was never assessed. Now they're assessing it. International schools are already assessing dance, drama, theatre and all these are assessed subjects. Music also. So you're going to have subjects like music technology in schools, you're going to have adventure skilling, you're going to have all kinds of very exciting and interesting avenues for children to develop themselves holistically. Strengthening recruitment and deployment of teachers. Teachers are going to get a lot more importance now. There's going to be a proper career development plan and a career growth path for teachers. They are hoping to create teaching as a profession right in the beginning with the integrated BA, B.Ed, BSc, B.Ed, and they'll pay more. Salaries will go up. With the 6% GDP, definitely the pay scale will change. The progress card for students will change. Number 9. Progress card will completely change. 10 is a twinning option and pairing of public schools with private schools. So you don't have the whole dilemma of right to education and people running from the public education into private education and all that. So this is the key proposal of school education, and then we are going to look at the key proposal on higher education. 20 very many important critical points. First one is restructuring higher education institutions to include multidisciplinary HEI courses. The courses that you have never heard of will be introduced in the next 5 years in your very college, in the same college, in this college. 5 to 10 years you'll have so many more courses coming up. Very exciting, isn't it? Increase gross enrollment ratio to 50% from the existing 27. UG programs will be 3 or 4 years with multiple exit and entry options. 2 years master programs with the second year devoted entirely for internship or research. 4-year bachelor's program, 5-year integrated master's program. MPhil is discontinued immediately. Undertaking a PhD will require, of course, a master's degree or a bachelor's degree. You can do a PhD directly after your bachelor's. So if you do an integrated bachelor's, you can do a PhD straight away. Straight away. You don't have to do a master's. Very interesting. Setting up model universities in association with the national research centers. India will be promoted as a global study destination. That is also something very important. In our international schools and where I do work, I mean, we do have children from other countries, like from Korea, from South Korea, from Thailand, students from Germany, the United Kingdom, the United States, and almost like 34 students representing 30-40 countries, and we have 1,250 students on campus. Now in the future, in colleges like this, you'll have many more international students. Earlier we were only getting students from Iran and Africa and you know, some very few countries for higher education, but in the future, if India is promoted as a center of excellence in higher education, we do have good infrastructure, good faculty members, you'll have a lot more international students coming in to study here. It's more affordable, more economical for them, good residential facilities. That will create a culture of internationalization. That's where we really need to grow in our higher education institutions. Of course, MOUs with foreign universities, you know, high-performing Indian universities will be encouraged to set up campuses, and these are universities abroad. They can come in India and set up their campuses here, charge Indian fees. Exciting, isn't it? Just imagine a Harvard or Yale coming to India and setting up a campus here in India. Or Oxford University takes interest. Already Harrow International School, Harrow is one of the very prestigious international schools in the UK, is already setting up 4 campuses in India. And it's a school, and after the pandemic they have realized people may not go to the West. The West has to go to the East. So what do? Set up colleges over here and offer degree programs and have online training and all kinds. It's very flexible, very interesting. So you will have foreign universities setting up campuses here. Already Harrow is coming, and very many international schools from, you know, the CIS schools have come in. And I'm quite certain that in the future universities will also come in and set up campuses here. Very, very many. Next 20 years. Of course, the setting up of higher education council, only a single council, existing regulatory bodies like UGC, AICTE, NCT are disbanded, and we're going to set up a national research foundation. Maximum fees that a college can charge will be fixed. So you won't have colleges charging the fees which are sky high and another colleges charging very low fees. No, the fees are going to have equality, more or less equal status in different institutions. Government has set up 2040 as a target year to complete the implementation of NEP 2020 for higher education institutions particularly. And by 2030, all teacher education courses will have 4-year BEds. Teacher education programs will be conducted within multidisciplinary colleges. Government spending on education will be enhanced to 6% of GDP, which is a big hurrah for us. So education is slowly gaining predominance. So SDG 4 is automatically being done when we implement all this. Do you understand? UN SDG 4 is being implemented through the NEP in India. Now what's the learning part? That is the technical part of it. Now we've covered UN and SDG 4 and we have talked about the NEP, but what is the learning path? A learning path is a pathway or a sequence of events, one after the other, that take place in the life of an individual. So we say, okay, let's go to school first, then we go to college, then we go to university, and then we go to our jobs or workplaces, and that's learning and a pathway for learning, isn't it? But now there's going to be no age bar for learning, and there's going to be no fixed routine. You don't have to have this routine. You can go to work first and then study later while you're working. You don't have to go to university necessarily. And there's a lot of online learning and training that is happening, a lot of twinning programs. So it's a personalized development trajectory based on an individual strategy for achieving long-term personal goals. So if I ask this student, okay, ma'am, tell me your next 5-year plan. She'll probably say, I have a master's in commerce. I'm going to look for placements. I'm going to go for placements, get selected in one company, get selected, get hired there, work there for 3 or 4 years, and then I'll move to another company. That's a status quo answer. Everybody's going to give the same answer at a master's level. But there are some people who will say, I'll do a PhD. The same student will not do a PhD. Another student would do a PhD. Why? Because the personalized learning pathway is different. That person would prefer to work. Another person would prefer to study. Somebody else would say, you know what, I'm getting married. That's the best learning for me. So everybody has their own strategy of dealing with life. And some people who are married actually go back to university and work after very many years of gap and break. And they do it. That's their own learning pathway, a customized learning pathway. So what are we going to do here? We are going to look at what flexible learning really means. Flexible learning means there is no age for specialized or generalized learning. No age. There are flexible entry points, and there is no sequence for formal and informal learning. Right now, this is more or less formal learning, formal. But in the future, it will be informal learning, outside the classroom. Yeah, you will be learning outside the classroom, through internships, through shadowing maybe a mentor, or the CEO of a company, or internships, isn't it? Or you can study outside the classroom in the fields. I mean, it doesn't matter where you really study. I mean, it could be at any place. You know, at the comfort of your home. Informal learning. So formal education, like coming to class every day and all, is going to reduce dramatically. You won't be having these attendance systems, 90% attendance. No, you'll probably not be coming to work and going to college at the same time in this country for very many years, until we understand that work and study have to go hand in hand. Now, let me tell you how this happens. In the United Kingdom, people who go for a master's level study course, and I'm associated as a career counselor with Seeker Overseas, and we send students abroad to the UK for higher education. Now what happens is those students go there and they work and they study during their master's course. Do you know that? 3 days college, 3 days they work. They have 20 hours of student work and they balance it, so they don't go to college every day. They go to college on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. In between, they go and do their work. Fantastic. They earn money and they pay for their tuitions and supplement their living expenses and their income. So this is how flexible learning happens. So you can work and you can study. Who says you can only study or you can only work? You have to get out of that fixed mindset in our country. We have to create these ecosystems that our children actually have, our students have the capacity to go and work and come to college at the same time. That will give independence, and that will give a practical solution to the financial capacity that they can develop during these times. That will encourage the workforce also to hire a younger profile of people. If we can strike that balance, flexible learning really makes sense to me. In this country, there's a lack of workforce, there's a lack of skill set development, all because we are just teaching theory in the classrooms. Year after year, the curriculum is becoming a problem. Exams are becoming a challenge, and the routine is getting too much, tedious for the student. They're getting bored in those classrooms. This is advocacy. You change the system. For that, you need to know the system and the challenges in the system to talk against it. Do you understand? Now, if the student council, council raises a thing, you never know. It could happen with St. Joseph's College. Implementation of NEP, let us work and let us study. Why do you want us 100% attendance? 100% attendance, okay, over 3 days then, we'll come to college on 3 days. 3 days we go to work. Can you find work? Definitely you will find work. Bangalore is the IT capital. Reforms, whenever we are discussing reforms, it has to happen within the system first. There's no point pontificating and then coming and conferencing and going away, and there's no action taken as a follow-up after that. So I do hope that I leave some seeds with some of the empowered minds here who will in the future probably make that difference. In the West, after high school, students start working. Some of them take jobs, some of them don't. Doesn't matter, it empowers them financially, independence is there, and that's why they give more importance on earning money than studying. Here we keep studying and then we produce graduates and postgraduates. due to our largely theoretical systems who cannot be employed. Who have no clue what's going on in the marketplace. Clueless. They are absolutely clueless what is really going on. Don't get discouraged. It's time we wake up. And flexible learning is going to do that. If you really implement flexible learning in the first place. Dual qualifications. You can do 2 courses at one time. Who said you can't study? You can do 2 courses. I'll study in this university and I'll register for another course in another university. No problem. It could be an open learning platform. Got it? MOOCs, Coursera's, you can empower yourself with certifications, pay a little money and you can get that. Virtual internships are becoming a reality today. Virtual internships. Twinning programs. Twinning programs. 2 universities scaffolding against each other and the program is running here and parallelly in another country, so you get the option of going and studying in another country. Same course, but it's twinned with another university. You can go and get credits from there also and get exposure from, like MBA from here and then Grenoble University, France. You study in India for 1 year, go to France, study there, second year. Very exciting. Completely changes your life. Your mindset changes. You stop looking only at the local scenario and local problem. You become empowered with reality, what is really there in the world. And the world is a very big place. Just depends how much exposure you will get, how much exposure you're striving to get, isn't it? So lifelong learning is all about getting exposure, meeting new people, learning new things, and sharing of resources. That's about it. Ideas, doing some new things on the ground, something meaningful. School and university. Students in the school will be studying university courses. Come on, sir, it sounds impossible. Yeah, you'll have a 7th grader doing credit courses at university level. He'll be learning coding and hackathons and all he'll be doing at university level. 14-year-old child, 16-year-old, they'll be getting credit programs from universities. University professor is his guide. On the job, supplemented qualifications. I'm not going to go to college, I'm going to go to work. My mom needs the money, fair enough. And the marketplace should be open to that. Go work. Then I will study, or I will work and study simultaneously. Online education, online graded schools and universities. There are so many schools now that are coming up. There's one classic example of a school. I don't necessarily advocate online schooling, but some people want to do it for the sake of doing. They source curriculum programs and they do only online schooling. It's a completely online school that runs 24/7 in different parts of the world. So the school is working in India also and is working in the US also, different time zones and the same curriculum and different students and different faculty. So the school never sleeps. There are always students registered in the school, they're clocking in there in the West and then when time difference they're clocking here. The same school, totally online. So universities may have that system and structure in the future like that. Google certificates, these are very tough certification courses. They have 64 assignments. But if you complete a course like that, you get a 100K income in the UK. 100K is $100,000 per year. We have family and we know what people can do. Okay, that's a talent-driven economy and people can do that. You do that certification, you could be in high school and you can straight away get a job. It's a very tough certificate. Google has launched it. You do those certificate courses and you don't need any St. Joseph's College or Bangalore University degree to get a job. I will get a job without that. I'll get a certificate course, 1-year course, 64 assignments. I'll finish the entire online course and go get a job. I don't need degrees to get a job. Do you understand skill set development, technical training? This is how powerful it is. We don't have technical training in the country. We don't have skill set development. We don't have talent and potential driven courses. It's theory. We need to reduce emphasis on theory. We have to create a reform system and NEP has given the framework, we have to use it wisely. Transfer courses, you can take courses and transfer them to another college. Right now it doesn't happen. TC is only gained after you finish your college, you will get a TC that you can leave. Or a schooling system, when you finish a school, you get your TC, you go to another school. Now you'll have credits transferred, you can transfer credits to another college like it's done those. Skill set development courses, many of skill set development programs have to come up. They have to come up. So, like I said, flexible learning pathways are just a framework. There's no fixed age or point of entry or exit. There's no fixed sequence. You customize it according to your requirement. And the education system will adhere to it. Individuals can do it, groups can do it, workplaces can do it. The Infosys Training Center have set up their own training and research institute. They don't trust anything. All the engineers coming out of the engineering colleges, when they go to Infosys, they have a 6-month training program, a rigorous program that happens in Mysore. And I've been to the Infosys Training Institute. They have set up their own training institute. Don't be surprised if they set up a university in the future. They have a beautiful campus, massive ecosystem and infrastructure, and it's better than most universities that I've seen. Gorgeous campus and all the amenities to make the students happy, and cafeterias and the learning and the quality of faculty that there are. Of course, they have the corpus, they could invest and they could set up that infrastructure, but in the future, if there's a 6% GDP, then government can allocate funds to the government institutions and colleges that are willing to do things differently, isn't it? And meaningfully. Flexible learning pathways without compromising on quality or sustained learning. Quality courses I leave for you to choose. I am nobody to brand anything. This is high quality, this is low quality. No. Quality is a perspective. In your eyes, what quality means may not be the same for another. Of course, there are benchmarks for evaluating that on a regulatory framework. I'm not going there. But I would let you decide the qualitative meaning of quality and choose your own provisions for higher education or school education. Sustained learning is talking about lifelong learning. We don't have to give up studies after a certain age when we go to work. No, we can come back and learn, conference, write papers, publish, dialogue, attend forums like some of the work I do. You work and then you do social work. Do you understand? If you don't do it, your life may remain incomplete in certain areas because you won't network beyond your office space and beyond a paycheck. You have to do little more, and you'll find little more meaning also through that. No fixed entry and exit levels from schools or colleges or workforces. You can go any way around and as flexible as you want it. We can make it like that. It's a challenge, but if everybody accepts it, and the NEP is a framework enabling people to understand it and then action it out. There's no set guidelines for the NEP. Every college is going to do their own work and institutionalize NEP regulations. It's going to be individual institution that's going to take a decision. There should be a co-construction between student body and the faculty union or faculty bodies that come together, sit and say, let's take feedback from the students. What do the students really want? Rather than this is it, this is what we have, take it or leave it. No, there's going to be a lot of co-construction of ideation from student bodies and faculty bodies. So the learning pathways are going to change a lot. A quick glimpse at the UNESCO research, just a few slides before I close. UNESCO already did research on flexible learning. The UNESCO, which is a wing of the United Nations, already did research on flexible learning, already. And what they found was rather startling. So Dr. Michaela Martin carried out a case study. What is flexible learning pathway? I will articulate. It refers to entry points and re-entry points at all ages and all educational levels, strengthening links between formal and non-formal structures, recognition, validation and accreditation of knowledge, skills and competencies acquired through non-formal and informal education. So they did all these questions, they laid out the questions. What are these policies? How effective are these? Does the establishment of flexible learning really help? What lessons can we learn? So they did a case study in 3 stages, methodology of 3 stages. Some of the countries from the UNESCO regions were ascertained, and the questions were tested out, the hypotheses were tested out whether flexible learning really makes any difference. These were the case studies carried out: Finland, UK, Morocco, India, Malaysia, Jamaica, Chile, South Africa. 8 countries. What do they find? They first put into place a dimension of flexible learning, and then they investigated to see the growth of higher education was much higher in the developed countries or high income countries. I will again play, to this in a very subjective and cautious manner, saying that their currency is higher than our currency, so that is why they can say that they are high income because the rupee and versus the dollar value or the euro or the pound is at a different level, right? The pound, one pound is 100 rupees. So high income countries are showing that flexible learning pathways are taking them even higher in terms of the tertiary education gross enrollment ratio. Flexible learning is benefiting them because they understand how to implement it. Let's not go into the money market. Let's just think of a creative, constructive way in which these countries are growing. It is because they are offering flexible learning. And we are not growing because we are not offering flexible learning. We are not growing in our education system because we are inflexible and very difficult. Our college systems are bureaucratic and they are not willing to change. That's why the NEP is giving a framework. For heaven's sake, change. That's the best way. Let our students earn money at a younger age. Let them study for 3 days, let them work for 3 days. Why can't we do that? Of course we can do that. Reduce the burden of curriculum and exams and all that. Colleges will have more autonomies. In fact, the colleges will outshine the universities. The university structure and bureaucracy is going to be seeped in age-old, 200-year-old rules and regulations that were laid down. We have to change. So, some of the challenges were the bureaucracy, like I said, administrative fragmentation, too many rules and regulation, too much of competition. Too much of competition between local institutions. This institution is competing with this for admissions, or this one is competing for faculty, they are poaching faculty, whatever. I mean, that's petty, isn't it? Let's look beyond all this. Institutional factors, pedagogy, curriculum provision, institutional culture, hierarchy, some person sitting there is of another generation and doesn't understand how to implement it. So you need a mixed age profile. Like I said, intergenerational dialogue is necessary. Student voice has to be heard. They are the largest stakeholders in this entire new age. Information and guidance is missing. They don't know how to do it. They know what NEP is, but how to implement that? That's the problem. Think about it. So there are some working papers. You can always go and look at UNESCO and working papers. This was a case study, and Jamaica was shown to have an abysmal, very low, ineffective higher education, flexible learning pathway, but UK seemed to have far better learning outcomes. So some research papers that I have referred to, and with that I'll say thank you very much.